Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Never gonna lose, never gonna win. Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Indi, hello. How are you?
Good. How are you, Ashley?
Absolutely fantastic. Where are you? That's a different office to I normally see you in.
I am in our Barcelona office. So, I flew over yesterday, and this is the coffee area.
Oh, very nice.
Joining me for coffee and lunch.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. I love that. I'm here with my gin. It's actually water. So
it sounds like a Spanish lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. So how's the weather there? Sorry, British, I've got to ask, what's the weather like?
Yeah, we bought the rain, so I'm pretty happy. My name actually means rain warrior, so I'm quite happy with that. So it doesn't bother me.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I quite like it here. It's everyone laughs about it. They're kind of enjoying the cooler kind of day. It's been really sunny here, apparently.
Okay, cool. Well done to you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
So I work as a chief of staff for Arex. Most people will go, what does that mean? And day to day, just like I work on commercial deals and contracts and everything to do with growth. Obviously, Arex is an alternative financing system. So we worked through accountants and bookkeepers in the UK. We work for accountants and bookkeepers across Europe. But more recently, we have also gone a step further back in the supply chain to work with different types of tech platforms and make it easier for them to plug and play the same sorts of financing into their own platforms so that they can offer more and more SMEs access to quicker cash flow.
Fantastic. So yeah, we want to know a little bit more about Arex. We also want to know a little bit about a podcast that you might be involved in.
Yeah, it was started its life as an experiment, and it was only because Ryan, John, and I met on a couple of calls, and we just got on very, very well, and it was such a natural chat. We had a couple of other people on the same calls, and they sort of noticed that we had this natural tendency to just rib each other, and you could just sit there and listen to us just hazing each other, and just like we had never met in person, we'd never even spoken on a phone before. So it was a really random happening. And then after that, we sort of got together afterwards and say, hey, like, why don't we just try it? Why don't we just try this thing and see if there's anything in it? Like, could we make a podcast? Would people listen to it? Is it the best format? Like by that point, everyone had kind of been on webinars and gone through COVID and was slightly sick of trying to tune into long webinars and things. So we kind of figured that a podcast might be a better format for it. And that's what we ended up doing. Like we didn't expect it. We didn't know how long it would go on for. We didn't know. We just kind of started with the cheesiest name that you can imagine. And
very good cheesy name. I like that. Go on, give it a plug. Digi
Tools in Accrual World. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, we got the most complaints that we ever had was about the name, which now we just lean into it. We're like, we're not changing the name. It's a mouthful, but hopefully if you manage to kind of find us on the podcast channels, which people have, then we're just going to lean into the cheese.
Fantastic. There's nothing wrong with a bit of cheese. So how many listeners have you got around the world then?
I think that's the bit that we're still trying to track. Like we know that we have like in the LinkedIn where we're posting things and the reach and the listens that we get on that is into the thousands. But individual podcasts are like, okay, you'll get stream numbers that are in Spotify and on Apple, and then you have to go into each platform to track. But one thing I would say is that we did start tracking from last week our highest chart positions on different episodes. And we ranked, our highest position so far has been number 11 in the UK for business news. So we were quite impressed with that.
Has been.
Sorry, say that again, Ashley. Something just glitched.
We lost a little bit of internet then, and I went weird as well. So we missed all of that. So your highest number of episodes, your highest reaching episode was Yeah, highest rank.
Was on the Steve Vamos one, so from
Oh yeah,
Zero,
Mr.
and we
Zero. Yeah.
ranked Mr. Zero, and that ranked number 11 in the UK for business news.
Oh, well done you. Well done you. Oh, fantastic. That's
Yeah.
great news. That is great news. And that's only going from strength to strength. So well done on that. So let's get back to this Arex thing then. So it's finance, right? Is it or
It is. It's financing technology. So we make it easier for people to take any form of commercial paper and turn it into something where we can trade it in our own private marketplace that we have institutional investors in. And those institutional investors then have their own bidding strategies. They would never bid in this area because they would never invest in SMEs, but instead we've turned the data points that SMEs have into something that those big institutional investors can read and then trade against, which means that we are able to drive the cost of the financing right down, make it very competitive then for the SMEs to get quick access to their cash in an unpaid invoice or in a purchase order. So we're able to use that data more meaningfully and turn it into something then that unlocks cash for them.
right? Okay, get that. I get that. So I'm running a small accountancy business. I've got a few of my clients that are struggling to get payments in and stuff like that. I would then introduce them to you guys, and then you pick up all the pieces. Is that how that works?
Yeah, we work. So one of the reasons that we work with accountants and we love accountants is because actually, like the way that we're able to do that for SMEs puts you in a precarious position of risk. You know, you have to be able to make sure and vet that SME to know that it's a legitimate invoice or it's a legitimate purchase order. So for us, accountants have always been a real partnership approach to kind of working with the SMEs. We want to work with the accountant to verify that this is something that that they think their client can benefit from. And when we work with most of the accountants, they recognize that actually we're so fundamentally different as a model from everything else that's out there when it comes to financing, because we don't require like them to sign lengthy agreements. We don't require them to open a different bank account and things like that. And I think in this day and age, working with accountants, like most of them don't are the ones that are approached first by the SME to say, oh, okay, what are my options out there? And they're able to advise on things like technology that, in the past, like go back 10 years, that was never necessarily part of the role. There's a reason that the podcast has taken off is because that role of the accountant has evolved so much that they need to understand the way that a payment mechanism software can be implemented, or what are the best forms of technology for a particular industry. So that's why, when I joined Arex, it was more because, I've worked with accountants for years now, and I think it's a very interesting industry to work within. I love how everyone's so supportive of one another, and even if you're kind of in the same industry, the competition is not so much that you're just thinking, right, okay, I need to win against that next person, the accountant next to me. Instead, there's a lot more collaboration that goes on.
The collaboration is incredible, isn't it?
Exactly. I like the fact that people are so willing to share and take notes from each other, take each other's playbook and run with it. That doesn't happen in every industry.
No.
And plus the parties are, I mean, like baptism of fire. If you haven't been to an accounting party, you haven't really been to a party at all.
No, that's true. That's true. So you've been working with accountants and bookkeepers for a long time.
Yeah.
Tell me, what challenges are you seeing accountants and bookkeepers having at the moment, Indi?
Well, so go back a few years, and I felt like more of it was a challenge of unlocking more time so that you could work on being more of an advisor to businesses. And so that was the kind of big, like pre-COVID, you really were trying to just see how you could reduce the amount of time in manual processing. But then post-COVID, it's been the same story over and over again. That it always comes back to how you can turn a penny into a pound, how you can make the cash flow stretch further. So one of the mandates I had many years ago when I was working at another software company, Capium, was that we looked at how the product could evolve and what were the other applications that a kind of accounting software should have for a modern business. And we only had two mandates, which was to unlock time or to help people get paid quicker. So that help people get paid quicker for me became like, something that I couldn't let go of, and something that I really wanted to figure out what the best solution was. And that's how I came across Arex. But that's the same story time and time over. And that's exactly with the podcast. We've worked with companies like Comma and Libio, because again, it's all in that payment mechanism. So I think the main challenge that keeps on coming back to the accountant's front door is how they can then have a toolkit of options for businesses that they work with to say, okay, this is something that you can do to help yourself get the money in quicker to manage your working capital, rather than just relying on loan after loan, which is what happened during COVID and has, as a result, kind of crippled a lot of different businesses. And now we're thinking, okay, well, what are they going to do for this next sort of 2 year slog that we're expecting most SMEs to have? So yeah, that for me is where I think most accountants, like the common challenge keeps coming back to is, and that's why we've seen such a sort of groundswell of different forms of payment mechanisms and fintech sort of come into the market. You've seen it at Digital Accountancy, at Accountex, at Xerocon. They dominated.
Yeah, and in the olden days, Ian Cooper's on the line. I'm grilling Ian next week, so he's coming on next week. Where is he? Yeah, definitely an attitude of abundance with many firms. So yeah, absolutely, Ian. So years ago, I was running a small business. I'm just saying, if I was running a small business years ago, or an accountant years ago, we'd probably be going for lunch or playing golf with the local bank manager that would sort out our loan and stuff. And I'm just thinking, we had 4 or 5 banks in my little town here. We were like 17,000 people live in the town. The last but one bank is going. It's any day now, I'm sure. But definitely by the end of the year, we will just have one bank in the high street.
Yeah.
And we did have 5. So A, who am I going to go for lunch with now? But B, how am I going to get some money for my business? And I guess what you're doing now is you're helping the accountants in the town to become the new bank manager. So they should be getting a lot more lunches.
Well, it's not even that we're trying to necessarily say, yeah, like we help the accountant do it. The accountant's getting that footfall either which way, whether they like it or not, because where else do you go? If you think about like the entry points, if you're trying to find the routes to get access to cash, you either make some poor decisions yourself by Googling, or maybe you ask friends or you'll ask business like peers about it. But the role of that accountant is in starting to show that that's something that they need to be able to advise on, and most of them have a high street presence. So that's why they'll find that actually, like, the more that they work with certain forms of technology, and the more those technologies are speaking about it and integrating it and embedding it into their own platform, it's a natural extension that the people that work with those technologies should then be able to advise on all elements to do with them. So that's why I say we've taken that step back in the supply chain. We are working with other platforms to embed the same sort of functionality into that platform so that they can benefit from the underlying infrastructure that we've built with these investors and unlock the cash through their platform, which means that it's not just like a Xero that would do it or a Sage, but instead it can be any technology that has data that can end up then providing that financing. And by de facto, standard that if you're an accounting practice and you're recommending these softwares, then that is why it's probably falling to the accountant to then say, well, they should know about this. They were the first ones that were approached when the bounce back loans happened, and every other furlough scheme that was put in place. So it's just a continuation of what happened a few years ago. And I guess that's why people are now expecting that they should be able to speak to their accountant about it rather than their bank manager.
Yeah, and this is where the accountants, we know, because we're in the industry, are the most most trusted advisors. Above your doctor, your solicitor, and all of that. And so people are going to accounting. Oh, how do I do this? I need some invoice finance, or I need a new van, or I need a new bit of plant to make some bigger whatsits, or I need a new entrance to my garden centre. And so you guys are helping facilitate all this, or helping the accountant to facilitate this. So all of this sounds really, really complicated for me running my small accountancy practice, right? And so, like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, and now, hang on, these Arex people, what do you do? What do you do? Do you hold my hand? Do you do it for me? How does all of that work in real life?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we have to onboard these people, these businesses, to know, in the same way that a bank would have to onboard and do the AML and the KYC. You have to do that because it's anything to do with financial technology.
Oh, yeah.
You need an agreement on that. So yes, they come through, they onboard in that same way. But once they are set up, the difference is that it's a kind of as and when you need, like on demand financing. So anytime that somebody wants to access, they want to choose one of the invoices in their like debtor book, they can do that. That's simple enough for them to do. What we do is we work with the accountants and say, look, it's respectfully, it's an accountant's relationship. We are someone that then says, okay, we're an extension of your existing services. If someone is coming to you to then say, okay, well, I want to try and like get some more money in, that you're going to advise things like, okay, well, maybe let's look at your debtor days, let's look at your overdues, let's look at, that you're going to look at sort of 2 or 3 things that say, okay, well, let's get some like a little bit of a health check. And one of those options is, okay, yeah, you could speed up the payment for sure. Like, there are softwares, plenty of softwares that do that. What we say is we're another option that allows you to look at the toolkit and say, for certain debtors, you may just want to sell that invoice and get it off your balance sheet. And actually, we can do something with that. And it will be nominal in terms of negligible in terms of the cost to you as a business, but you get that money in 90 days quicker or 120 days quicker without having to pay an extortionate amount, because the way our model works allows us to really drive the interest rates down to for these businesses. We don't make the money off like the interest rate going higher. That's not where our model works. We make the money the more invoices and the more purchase orders that we get.
Perfect. That makes great sense. So like a lot of accountants, they send out all these bills, but they're too nice and don't chase them and stuff like that. So what you're saying is maybe start doing invoice financing through Arex, and so the accountants are getting the money quicker.
Exactly. You reduce the debtor days to 0 because you just sold it. The money is in immediately, and that's the difference. So we know that we do that. We know that it doesn't. In some cases, like in Finland, it works for every type of company, every industry, and some businesses put their entire debtor book with us.
Wow.
And for some businesses, it doesn't, and instead they use us as a seasonality bridge. So they know that the summer months are going to be quieter. So they make sure they get the money in before the summer, so they can make sure that they continue to pay to service the payroll over the summer months while they don't have, a lot of jobs coming in. It really depends. And this is why I say the accountants are really building a toolkit. And if you think of it in those terms, look in the bag and think, okay, what are the options I've got? I've got the softwares that can like chase the invoices, so I don't have to do that as the accountant. The credit control pieces. I've got the ability to speed up the payment mechanism, so I can do something that's like with the direct debits, or things that then help make that a little bit easier. Use the open banking rails and etc. And then I can also use things like financing, on demand services. There's a couple of us that are out there. We have different underlying mechanisms because with Arex, it's not our money. So it's not in our interest to then like make sure that like we don't get businesses in. So yeah, that's how it works for us.
No, absolutely superb. So What's a top tip you can give an accountant or bookkeeper today, Indy?
My top tip: listen to the podcast. Yes. I'm sorry.
That's absolutely fine. So I tune into your podcast. What am I going to be listening to?
Look, we are, well, first off, it's not for the faint-hearted. I say that like I really do mean it. We have a tendency to be quite controversial. It's just how we are as people with one another, and we have a very strong dynamic that we're thick-skinned with one another. Maybe not with everyone else, so bear that in mind. Like especially me. But the other thing is like what we concentrate on delivering is app news. It's like there are so many technologies out there. It's hard to keep up with how each of them are advancing, which sectors they're working well for. Like we try and concentrate on like, okay, if you're in a particular industry as well, that we want to be able to then concentrate our efforts and making sure that you understand the best technologies that are out there and what the app updates are and what they mean for the businesses that you're working with. So there's that. And then we also try and find people or areas of keen interest where we think we should ask the tough questions. That like John and Ryan would absolutely say to you, like, my job is really to make sure that we do try and find the answers to some of the tough questions. So I go hunting for tough questions. I ask tough questions, or I don't ask them. I generally tend to be in the background, but I will say I need the answer to a certain question, and we will push for that because that's what we want to respect people with is just give them something that hopefully for them allows them to take either a second or a third look at a piece of software and say, is this really working for me? Could it go the distance? So they don't have to then make all the big investment of their business moving from one platform to another without knowing absolutely that it's the right choice for them. So that's what we try and do on the podcast. And it's released sort of, every other week.
Okay. You're having a little bit of a break at the moment. When are you back?
So it's because season 2, we are completely changing our formula. And so that is our little break at the moment. The reason for it is that like we've experimented with app news and doing interviews separately and the types of interviews and the types of people. And we have noticed there's quite a few other podcasts that are coming out, and like we don't want to replicate what everyone else is doing. So we had some thoughts about how we're going to improve it. And actually, I think from the feedback that we've had and some of the other things that we've done, we've come up with something that we think then could be like, ultimately, it just is a different experience. There'll be 5 different areas of interest that we're trying to cover, and they will cover a range of different sectors and industries for businesses as well. So we're expecting that to kick off by the end of this month. And that's because we want to do it justice. It's the only reason that we've decided that we'll actually put some real time and investment into making sure that this next step is the right one for us and for the listeners who invest the best part of an hour of their time listening to us.
Perfect. And it's good fun too, which is great.
You're going to be on it, so let's bear that in mind. We haven't spoken about that yet. Springing it on you.
That is springing it on me. I'm really shy, so I don't think I can do that.
No, you'll be fine. So yeah.
So, what's your best story of how you've helped an accountant or bookkeeper?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there was a business that we helped that was terrified about closing down post-COVID. They had tried financing before with a more traditional solution, and it completely toppled their business and they had to close it down. This particular accountant had come to us and said, this guy is really terrified about financing, but he's got really little choice because he's working with much bigger suppliers and he can't stand eye to eye and compete with other terms that everyone else is giving. He needs to pay out the working capital. And actually, he's terrified about taking financing up because he's almost got a post-traumatic financing disorder, which is like, okay, this toppled me before and I just don't want to do it. So they were pretty like hard up against it, and they needed to kind of churn the invoices out like within a week. And so we got him onboarded, and he was one of our very first in the UK to do it. And that particular accountant and business, I mean, they've continued to sing the praises of Arex, and for me, I felt like personally that's really cool, because that business goes to the pub, and he's literally like a single, one of the biggest lead generators that you can imagine, because everyone's
fantastic.
I spoke to them, and he swears by it. He said, he said like this absolutely saved his business, and it's not only saved it, but now he pitches for much bigger contracts because he knows he can be punchier on the payment terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
He gives a bigger discount because he knows he can get the money in tomorrow to service the working capital.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. That's superb. So I've got one more question for you. Okay, I'm just going to go to next week so that so we can sort of like see who's on next week. I did say that we've got young Ian coming on. So wherever he is, I've created a little thing for him. We've got Ian coming on next week from FYI. He's the he's the head of ops there. I actually used to work with Ian, so it'd be great A, to catch up, and B, just to see what's going on with FYI. I'm sure you know Ian as well, don't you? Because he was
we met over drinks.
Chatting,
as I meet most people.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can people get hold of you and Arex and all of that sort of malarkey?
Hey, like LinkedIn's probably the easiest channel, or if you really fancy like taking the walk on the world side, the podcast is Digi Tools in Accrual World, and you can find it on all of the main sort of podcast apps or whatever it is that people use. But that one's probably the one that I'd say give it a listen. You can always email as well, the Digi Tools email address, if you're an app partner or an accountant, whatever, just to then say like what it is you like, you hate, or what you think could also be interesting, because I'm sort of like very attentive as well to very receptive to getting feedback. So
awesome. Okay. So fantastic. So last question. What did you want to be when you were at primary school?
Oh my God. Someone asked me this question just yesterday, and I'm laughing because I'm like, wow, what are the odds of that? So yeah, this is so funny. Two things, okay, because I figured you could run them alongside each other. One was a Power Ranger, because, of course.
Is that a Power Ranger?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like, what your character was. So one was that, which I thought I could run very well alongside being a Bollywood actress.
Fantastic. Why not?
Well, you get to sing and dance, wear crop tops, and marry a new prince every other day. So that's like, yeah, those were the two things I wanted to do.
And here you are hosting a podcast with Ryan and John. So how did it go so right for you?
I mean, that is kind of like Bollywood actress as well. It's like slightly exaggerated, maybe, I don't know. Well, we definitely play our own roles. I will say that. We know who the guys know that I'm the one that will probably ask the punchiest questions, and I will push them to as well, because I want to know the answers, as do they. And then they play different, roles as well with it. We know each other's strengths, and so yeah, I guess Power Ranger I'm still working out.
Fantastic. Well, you're a Power Ranger in my eyes. Thank you so much for coming on my show. Lovely to see your smiley face, and enjoy the rest of your time in Barcelona. And thank you very much indeed. And thanks to everyone for joining in today. Ian, for your comments, and I will see you next week. So cheerio now, bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.